Back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast for the last segment on Justin Fields. Nothing new with Justin Fields, just people commenting on it. Most recently, Emmanuel Acho, and on his show, he's a co-host on that show, FS1's Speak. He's one of the co-hosts, and one of the topics that was brought up was Justin Fields and, the trade that went down with Russell Wilson. I'm sure they got into Russell Wilson being in the pole position, as Mike Tomlin says, to be the starter, comparing him to Justin Fields. A lot of people, I think the majority of people would say that, or I've seen say that Justin Fields is going to end up being the starter. Everyone isn't writing off Russell Wilson, but they just see it as inevitable that Justin Fields will start at some point this season and ultimately just take Russ's job and be a very good deal for the Steelers overall for getting him at a bargain for only a 6th-round pick in that trade with the Chicago Bears. But Emmanuel Acho thought the opposite and went pretty hard and rough and pretty cruel on Justin Fields on how he viewed the two quarterbacks just stacking up against each other. He mentioned Justin Fields' record. As a starter, Justin Fields is 10-28. But everyone still believes in his potential. He's, I want to say 24 or 25 years old. At Ohio State, you saw a lot. It was pretty routine how special he was, throwing it, running it. That was all there. He's still young. The record doesn't show it. But I find it hard to give up on somebody or think that he's a game loser, as Acho put it, to say, he can't change from this. And a lot goes into how he plays and the results that a lot of people see on TV and how it all plays out, really. But to go on those comments, Emmanuel Acho said, specifically, Russ has never had to be carried by a team. Justin Fields, he's been dead weight. Russ has never in Seattle been dead weight. Then he added a few sentences later. There are 3 categories: game changers, game managers, and game losers. Russell Wilson might not be a game changer, but he's never been a game loser. Put him in a game manager category. Someone could very convincingly make a case for Justin Fields to be in the game loser category. He said someone could make a case. It seemed like he was making a case just the way he brought it up. And, I'm a Steelers fan. I've said it on this show. I liked the move that they made. I'm going to try and stay unbiased during this. I like the move. I think that it is a big upgrade bringing in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields in for Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky, and I'm forgetting Mason Rudolph last year. All those guys go out the door. You bring in not only Russell Wilson, who, to Acho's credit and to Russell Wilson's credit, had a good season last year. A lot of people won't talk about it because the Broncos weren't very good as a team, but him himself put up good numbers, more Russ in Seattle type of numbers. So for people to write him off a little bit, I'm still on the fence about that, of how early some analysts or some just people on social media have said that Justin Fields will take over. I'm still unsure. I expect it to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's not later in this year. But breaking those two things down, the sentiment that he said with Russ in Seattle compared to Russ in Denver and Justin Fields. The first thing you want to look at is Russell Wilson really never in his career had a situation comparable to Justin Fields, what he had to go through in Chicago. At least early Russell Wilson, mentioning him in Seattle, he said it in his quote that Russ had never been carried by a team in Seattle. So that's the first thing. Very different scenarios getting into the NFL, getting drafted. Russell Wilson was drafted in the 3rd round. Justin Fields was drafted in the 1st round, number 11. So already a quarterback that's drafted in the 3rd round had really no expectations. Nobody was drafting Russell Wilson or was evaluating him in the 3rd round and thinking, this guy's going to be the face of the franchise. This guy's going to help turn this team around. He's going to most likely be our starting quarterback for the next 5 to 8 years. Nobody was thinking that, first of all. So the expectations there are different. Then with Justin Fields, like I mentioned, drafted 1st round, he undoubtedly was going to be the face of this team, regardless if they were ready or not to make a push with Justin Fields. They clearly weren't. He was brought in with a lot of expectations, trying to adjust to the NFL, and with a lack of talent around him. They built it up in the last few years that he was there, but ultimately it was a situation with Ryan Poles when he came in that he saw this team and knew that they weren't really going anywhere with this group of players. He didn't blow it up, but he got a lot of people out of there and made some pretty significant changes. Unfortunately for him, I'm sure he would say that Justin Fields had to be collateral damage to them trying to get this team back to where they wanted to be. Still trying to do well by Justin Fields, but he, in doing that, acknowledges that this team really didn't do anything to help Justin Fields compared to Russell Wilson in Seattle. Comparing both of them, the level of talent that Russ came in, I already mentioned the expectations were nowhere. Nobody had expectations on their plate for Russell Wilson. And then you look at the team that he was drafted into. Marshawn Lynch was on that team. He had the Legion of Boom on the defensive side of the ball. Pete Carroll as the coach there already. Comparing it to, again, Chicago, I'm pretty sure Matt Nagy was the coach at Chicago, and nobody will compare those two coaches and how well or how comparable they are to each other because they don't compare. Pete Carroll is a lot better than him. Their defense goes without saying. The Legion of Boom is probably one of the best, if not the best, defensive units in the entire NFL. And you have one of the best running backs in the NFL, at least in 2012 when Russell Wilson was drafted. Right behind you, you can hand him the ball a lot. And they were very successful doing it, as well as Russell Wilson showing off his talent and winning them games. I'm not saying that he didn't do anything, but again, the talent that Seattle had on that team compared to Chicago, I'm looking for it now. The amount of Pro Bowlers in 2012, the Seahawks went 11-5 because of Russell Wilson as well, but they had 4 All-Pro members on that team and 6 Pro Bowlers on just the overall team as well. How many did the Chicago Bears have in the time Justin Fields was there? You could probably say maybe DJ Moore. I'm not really sure if he made a Pro Bowl. But that just looking at the Pro Bowls, the Pro Bowlers, the Hall of Famers most likely, you have Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman there, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner in his prime. Again, I mentioned Marshawn Lynch. All of that doesn't really support Justin Fields being a game loser because you haven't seen the whole thing where he would have been in, say he was drafted to the Seahawks in that team. I find it very hard to believe that he wouldn't have had any chance at being what Russell Wilson was, at least come close. They're very similar in play style, running it, throwing it. You can't tell me that Justin Fields wouldn't have had at least close to the level of success that Russell Wilson had in Seattle with that level of team. So that's another thing. I mentioned the expectations and just the level of it. Justin Fields isn't blameless. There has been moments where you could question some of the decisions that he's made, but to say that he was dead weight and really not contributing anything to this, I think is where you kind of skew and lose me, because if Justin Fields wasn't on the Chicago Bears, I don't think we would have mentioned the Chicago Bears in any light, in any sort of conversation regarding the Chicago Bears because of the lack of talent that they have. Another thing with Justin Fields and the kind of quarterback that he is, he attracts talent. People want to come and play with him when they're offered the chance to, when they're in free agency and seeing, maybe I want to go to the Chicago Bears. Oh, who's their quarterback? Especially if you're a wide receiver. If you don't think that quarterback's good, why would you even entertain the possibility of going there? So already him being there attracts more talent to him. And you've just seen how his teammates talk about him. DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson have all spoken on the trade about Justin Fields. They weren't happy about it. They were pretty, I wouldn't say upset, but just not happy to see him go. But they know it's a business and they want the best for him. So, again, that's another thing to see how Justin Fields isn't dead weight and just a game loser is very harsh in my opinion, because you haven't really seen him comparing him to just Russell Wilson in similar situations. If you want to look at the closest situation that they've had to each other on the level of team that they've had, you just have to look at Denver and how they were when Russell Wilson got there. The most comparable, really, realistically, in terms of numbers that you could compare Fields and Russell Wilson to would be Denver in that first year Russell Wilson got there in 2022. Russell Wilson in that year, I don't have to say that the team was bad. Everybody knows that how badly it turned out. But in that season, with the level of talent that the Broncos had, it was the most comparable to what Justin Fields really had his whole career in Chicago. Russell Wilson had 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Fields, the last 2 seasons that he was with the Chicago Bears, had 17 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, basically the same as Russell Wilson, and 16 touchdowns and 9 interceptions in 2023. Throwing, he had that was throwing stats. He had a 1,000-yard rushing season. Russell Wilson has never had a rushing season over 850 yards. So again, the most comparable situation, if you want to compare teams and breaking it down what they had to work with, the most comparable team is Denver of 2022. 2 good wide receivers, Darnell Mooney and DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, a solid running game, Javonte Williams for Denver, and Chicago having a running back by committee. Offensive line, similar. Defenses were pretty solid, underrated for both of them. And you see both of them have almost virtually exactly the same numbers as either of them do. And now they're in a situation with Pittsburgh. And to some extent, Russell Wilson, I'm not trying to bash on Russell Wilson and say that he's bad and he's getting overly hyped, because I like the addition when they announced him first. But they are a lot more similar. And when he was signed, people really just killed the decision. Yeah, they got him for free, the Steelers did. Basically, they're only paying about $1 million, and the Broncos are covering the rest of his salary. But when the Steelers signed him, a lot of people criticized the decision because they saw what Russell Wilson was. Recency bias again in sports. Seeing what he was in Denver and even before 2023, they weren't very impressed with what they saw. Similarly to Justin Fields, they've seen what he has been in Chicago, and they just forget what they saw at Ohio State, what people forget they saw with Russell Wilson in Seattle. All that just goes out the window, and people just look a year or two back and say, oh, they've lost it, they've never, or they're not going to regain any level of ability and talent that they had in their previous situations. It doesn't really correlate and doesn't really make for a logical argument to say they're game losers, they're washed up, they're not the kind of player that they were here or over here. Unless you compare them and have similar situations to what they are in now, I don't think that argument is valid. And again, game loser is very harsh in my opinion. It's very just not a logical thing to say with Justin Fields because he has age on his side. You can't think that he's lost all his ability to play quarterback or show you what he did show you. There were flashes last year. There's untapped potential there, like Mike Tomlin says. This is arguably, not arguably, a way better situation than Justin Fields had in Chicago. Better receivers, better running game, worlds above, better coaching in Mike Tomlin. Organization is stable, has been stable for the last however many years. Of course, they haven't won in the playoffs, and that's the most important thing. But just in terms of developing situations for quarterbacks to succeed, it's hard to find situations, organizations, the whole package better than Pittsburgh, especially at the price that Pittsburgh got both of them at. I'm expecting big things. I think this is a very good move for both Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and the Steelers. Unfortunately, someone is not going to play, and both of them want to play, but at the moment, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are similar in very similar situations, oddly enough, in terms of trying to prove people wrong, showing people that they can play. Of course, there's that age gap, but in the end, I think you can't determine, they're a game loser, they're washed up, without seeing them play in a way better situation than they've ever had, arguably. Probably not Russell Wilson, but Justin Fields for sure. That's where I stand on it. Seeing those comments, it didn't make too much sense to me. That's my 2 cents on it, trying to break that down for you guys, what he said, and giving you my side of it. I would love to know if you guys agree with me, disagree with me, see Acho's point, or want to make your own determination on Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, how they are going forward. I'll leave that up to you guys in the comments or in the chat box if you want to leave it. But that will do it for me on today's episode. That is the last topic I wanted to get to today. And I want to thank you guys again for joining me. And please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Make sure to also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok for more of this network's content. If you want to see more of me and this show specifically, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the Podcast Network channel on YouTube for YouTube Shorts that are posted every day on NFL topics. Full recorded live shows, all the shows that I've done in full are on both channels, as well as individual segment videos if you only want to watch a specific segment, or if you missed one segment that you want to go back and watch and not miss it. It's all on there on both channels as well. Tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more conversations, discussions, and topics surrounding the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host, signing off. Thanking you guys for joining me, and I will see you guys hopefully all tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go